How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTJProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Ara Still.
Venurian.
And Volacel, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week. But first of all, if you would like to get involved with the show, you can quite easily do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server and chat with the show hosts and other listeners to the show in real time. And you can most easily find our server by going to vtwproductions.com and clicking on the show logo on any of our recent show posts, which will take you directly to our server.
Yes,
We should probably start linking that thing in like the YouTube.
Oh yeah, it's on the YouTube
description
videos as well.
There you go. We can simplify that part of the shtick.
If you're watching this on YouTube, then you already know that, so meh. Alright, on the stream today, I brushed off a little bit of Space Engineers because, why not? They did a massive update, but I'm using one of the old maps I've actually worked on the show before. So I have no idea what changes they've made other than adding a bunch of DLC.
DLC?
You can now, apparently you can change the texture of your armor plates, as well as dress like a space cow. But you can always dress like a space cow, so, you know, whatever.
You can be more of a space cow.
You can wield space cow weapons, if you so choose. And we've started off immediately by talking about space cows. Right. Yeah. So the Steam sale kind of happened this week.
It's going on for a while. It lasts till like the 7th.
Yeah, we got another week of it yet.
Yeah, another week of meaningless little pseudo games that don't work.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in the news segment, because haven't they made a mess?
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, bad foreshadowing. So, I did the usual thing and exercised perfect fiscal responsibility and bought a bunch of games.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
About to say, that's a lie.
That's a complete lie. I've also been spending a good chunk of this week milking the mini game for vouchers. It's like $7.50 per voucher, so it's well worth doing. I've gotten maybe 5 or 6 of them so far. I mean, if I get enough, that's a full game. That's quite a decent full game too. So I bought a bunch of stupid little games that nobody cares about just to knock them off the list, because like, some of them are just like $5. But I also bought Devil May Cry 5 and proceeded to not be able to play it.
Pull your devil trigger.
I tried. I couldn't. Because I had a driver issue and the game decides to randomly hiccup in the middle of a boss fight. That's a good way to get killed.
Yeah, in Devil May Cry 5, that's the fastest way to get yourself killed, is to not push the dodge button at the right time.
Yeah, you've got to press that dodge button at the right time. Otherwise, that's it. You're done.
Well, the actual best way to not die in Devil May Cry 5 is just not be in danger at all. But
well, yeah, but failing that.
Yeah.
So
besides that, by the way, it doesn't really save you. You really do kind of have to not be in the way at all to begin with.
Yeah. I got to learn the timings, but in order to do that, I got to fix the stutter. And to that end, I had to update my drivers, which, because I'm an idiot, I decided to do immediately before the show, which broke everything.
Broke all of the things.
Broke just about everything. That was fun. So yeah, I'll try to Devil May Cry again a bit next week. Hopefully it actually lets me play the game and not just say, lol, you dead.
There's a folder of Devil May Cry memes I got, Fern, just ready to go the second you beat that video game.
Yeah. I have run into
You've just been saving them and are desperate to send them to someone?
I am.
I have run into a few other bugs, like there's a bit of a desync in the cutscenes at the moment, which is kind of weird.
There's just some bad lip syncing around. It may just be that.
I was expecting that, and I had spotted that in the ones that didn't desync, but this is like, Nero pulls the trigger on his gun, and there's like half a second of delay between that and the bang.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard any problems like that from people playing on PC. I suppose it's possible.
Apparently, from what I've been able to dig up, it's caused by the latest patch and certain video or certain drivers and DX12 just not playing nice.
So
for
the
whatever
usual
reason.
suspects, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. This is all stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully I've got that sorted out to play it. As far as actual geekery this week, aside from wrestling with that, the only other thing of real note I did was I watched the first half of Good Omens over on Amazon.
Oh, I read that book this past 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice. So it's the story about the apocalypse gone wrong.
Well,
depending on your definition of wrong.
Yeah, they kind of
I mean,
screw it up.
this is considerably more germane to the continued survival of humanity than conventional apocalypses.
Well, generally, when an apocalypse happens, you want it to fail. So for humanity, it's a good thing.
To give an out of context quote at the end of the book, gee, Crowley, whoever it was, if we'd actually been competent and good at our jobs, this could have gone horrible.
Yeah. So you've got this Amazon series, which is a 5-episode run because, British. I'm happy to say that they stick very close to the book.
So they don't ruin it?
They don't ruin it. There's a few little things that they modernize it, like Anathema suddenly has a tablet because modern times, things like that.
But how did the incredibly accurate prophecies make their way on tablet if there was only one copy of them?
Oh, that's the instead of having the card file she's carrying around.
Oh, okay. So instead of just a box of index cards, she just has a tablet?
Looks
I mean,
like
to be fair, nobody's used index cards for the past 30 years.
My work does.
Well, your work is special.
Yeah.
Your work hasn't moved anywhere since your granddaddy's time.
I'm trying to fix it.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress is right.
Well, for you it is. Not much work in progress for the others working there.
It's not. It's a whole lot of progress, a whole lot of not work for everybody else involved.
Oh dear. So yeah, they stick very close to the series. That very silly song that was in the promotional material about the baby with the nuns thing. Well,
Yeah.
wasn't in the actual show.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what are they thinking? What is this? Is this for real or is this some sort of troll?
Yeah, I think that ended up just being a troll. It's a very silly song though. So yeah, the plot is basically you've got an angel and a demon that have an arrangement, more or less just to cover each other's asses from their home offices while they do, well, basically enjoy
buddies.
humanity. Yeah.
That's what they are.
They are.
Like they pretend it's an arrangement. No. They're just Sunday drinking buddies.
Yeah, they're just in it for a good time at this point. And all of a sudden, the Antichrist is dropped on their doorstep.
Well, dropped on somebody else's doorstep. They kind of realize that's a problem and try to go fix it.
Yeah.
And the story is their incompetent ways of trying to make sure that doesn't go bad and how that accidentally saves the world.
Well, step 1 is they lose the Antichrist for the best part of 11 years.
Yes. And their shenanigans in trying to fix it. And
Yeah.
tailor the Antichrist to not be on either side by giving him equal doses of righteous and not so righteous teachings.
Yeah. Oh, wow, I am very good at driving this car. It is now upside down. This is a problem.
But the real Antichrist, he winds up with a normal conservative dad.
Yeah, it's just the standard pipe and beard British dad. How do I fix this?
I don't know. I cannot see your screen.
I'm going to break physics. No, I'm not. This isn't working. Oh dear. I seem to have failed.
What have you
miserably.
done?
I think I need to install more gyroscopes so I can disobey physics a bit more thoroughly. So yeah, they've kept it very close to the series. They've expanded out a little bit. Namely, it's the agreement through the agents. Which is essentially Crowley and Aziraphale showing up at very serious points in time and making complete nuisance of themselves. So you've got Aziraphale, for example, in the Bastille while that whole head lopping thing's going on outside. Yes, you know, the whole French Revolution where everyone got a bit carried away with the guillotines.
Poor Marie. What's up, my homies?
So yeah,
But,
I still haven't
have they
watched...
kept the best scene in the book, which happens pretty early, with the accounting people and the gunfight
Yes.
that happens.
Yes,
Okay,
that's still in there and largely intact.
I haven't
It's-
read that book in a couple of years, and I can't remember what you're talking about.
There's a scene where a guy has a paintball gun and shoots Aziraphale, thinking that he's a member of the corporate ladder, and he thinks that being aggressive like that is going to get him attention and a promotion. So Crowley turns all the paintball guns that this guy and his crew have into real guns, and then arms the entire accounting department they're shooting at with real guns, but tweaks them so they will not do any lethal damage.
Yeah.
And they have this whole company just shooting each other, trying to get promotions on the field.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, that whole bit is there. The scene indoors with the ex-nun kind of happens in a hallway, but that didn't really change a whole lot of the story there.
Yeah.
The lady they've got to actually play that nun is wonderfully vacant. So, it's a good time. It's very silly. I love the woman they've got to play War. She kind of fits the required role to a T. Especially the fact that she never stops smiling. It's quite disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got Famine, who is a very tall, very skinny man. Who are the other two now? Pollution
Death.
and Death has not made an appearance yet, but Death doesn't make an appearance in the story until at the end.
Start. Really. Yeah, the start of Act 3.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say. I didn't touch him.
Elvis has made an appearance.
Yes.
So yeah, I've still got 2 episodes to finish off and to see how they stick to the spirit of the story. But so far, it's just been a good, fun romp.
It was a fun, stupid book to listen to while I was doing something else.
Yeah. There's also
I had not read or listened to the book before until a couple of weeks ago.
Yep, and you will also be pleased to know that about 90% of the soundtrack is Queen.
That makes sense.
Well, if you
But after all, Best of Queen is pretty much the only thing that Crawley ever listens to.
well, it's all he can listen to.
That's all
Everything
he
that enters
can
his
listen
card it turns into Queen after a while.
There are worse things it could turn into.
Definitely.
I like the scene where he gets one demon trapped in a cassette tape, and he's like,
Was it Hester?
Yeah,
Hester.
He traps Hester in a cassette tape. He's like, I could just put him in my car and have him turn into Queen.
Yeah. Like this,
But that would be too cruel a fate for even the worst of demons.
There's a couple of strange things. Like Hester looks like you'd expect him to. He's kind of weird,
Yellow.
Creepy. But Ligor,
Old
for
school.
some reason, is walking around with a lizard on his head, and I've not been able to figure that out. Why?
I think that the implication is just that they just don't know how to blend in. Like the idea that you can accomplish anything by looking normal is totally lost on them.
Completely, yeah. So thus you end up with lizard on head.
Yeah, they make it a point that the modern demons and angels don't have a clue except for as what's his nuts and Crowley about how you can get stuff done by being subtle and impact more people.
They play with that a bit when Gabriel decides he's going to turn up on Earth, just in a bit that's not actually in the story, and he's trying to blend into humans by very loudly proclaiming that he's here to buy his pornography. So it's yeah. Yes, blending in the
Well,
the
humans are all
choir does not.
completely deranged, right? Humans are all completely depraved, right? So
Completely. Well, actually, no. These are the British, so not at all. Oh dear. So yeah, go and check it out. It is a lot of fun. And yeah, they would have been quite literally actually crucified had they messed with the stories. So I'm glad they haven't.
I actually did not know there was a Amazon series out for it until after I read the book. I was actually watching a Terry Pratchett pseudo documentary that mentioned Good Omens as one of the books and picked it up on Audible on a whim with my credit.
Yeah.
I've only been
that's-
telling you to read it for years and years and years.
Yes. Audible
Yeah.
actually put up a kind of a lot of sales about it. Like, here's the original version, and here's the tie-in version for the series, which is just the same one with a different cover. Not that it matters on
Yeah.
Audible. And here's the audio play, which is also really good.
The one with the new cover has remastered audio. I had the old version on my to buy list on Audible forever, and when I click the audio samples for the one with the new cover has better audio, but they're the exact same length.
Okay, that's
So-
still Stephen Briggs' version?
I think so, yeah.
Yep, okay. He does a really good job of that. He's also done the back half of the Discworld series.
Yeah, he was really good. I liked him.
Yeah. What else have I really done this week? Not much, I'm afraid. I did play a bit too much Starbound, admittedly. They put out a new expansion which adds bounty hunting, which is more or less just a second progression through the game. When that game launched, it had this annoying problem of, okay, you need to find alien artifact X. Go and scan crap until we tell you to stop. And that was it. You go out, you scan crap, and then you come back. At least bounty hunting now gives you something to do in that bit between time.
Aren't they bringing the story to the close or something at some point?
For
Or is
Starbound,
that something else?
that's
Yeah.
probably something else. The story for Starbound was self-contained.
Wasn't Starbound the game where I built a Fluffalo farm or something?
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of a side-scrolling adventure 'em up type thing.
Terraria in space.
Terraria in
Right.
space. Yeah,
I had a Fluffalo farm.
I see absolutely no problem with this.
Is
You
that
needed
like
it.
a
I am-
fluffy buffalo?
I am walking around in the
Is it-
game with a 3 foot tall top hat, so you know there's enough silly in the game to go around. Especially
Well,
when
you
I
needed
was...
Fluffalo. Yeah.
One of the funny
Oh,
things
right.
actually is when you try and take down some of the criminals in this new bounty hunting update, they will attempt to bribe you. And one of them tried to bribe me with his inferior top hat. It was just a normal top hat, not a 3 foot tall top hat.
Maybe he's just got bad taste in top hats and thinks his is better.
The entire gang was called something like the Sportish Gentleman or something like that, so everyone was running around in top hats. Top hats and monocles, the whole gang.
I see.
Yeah.
And yes,
so
Flufflos are fluffy buffaloes.
they
You
are,
need them for a ton of in-game stuff, and you need them of different colors.
Yeah, there's a lot of mods that add more variants to them as well for some of the more annoying
Please.
to grind up resources.
Yeah. So I made a Fluffalo farm.
Yeah, so Fluffalo is exactly what it sounds like. It's a fluffy buffalo. That's really been it for my week, is failing to play Devil May Cry. I don't want to wrestle with DirectX, so hopefully this driver has fixed the problem. Wrestling with DirectX is always a pain. So anyway, Vol, you have a Fergusy week.
Right, okay, we can start there if you like. So, Agatha, I played this week. The new pseudo-singularity, as they call them. The pseudo-singularities being the 4/5 escapees from the grand finale of the previous major story arc, where you basically go hunt down more demon pillars in particularly unusual circumstances. So the first two are Shinjuku and the CCC event, which is... I don't know why they did the CCC event like that. Like, it was intended to be a pseudo-singularity, except for some reason they decided to deploy it as an event instead.
Mm.
So, yeah, it doesn't... It's not brought up as often as the other ones are in the core story. However, it is still brought up, which is the strange thing. But yeah, I don't know why they make the decisions they do. But so this is the third one or the second one, depending on how you count it. It takes place in the subterranean world of Agatha, and it is widely held to be the worst it's widely held to be the worst of the pseudo singularities and one of the worst chapters in general in the whole game. People have compared it to Septum, which is
Bad.
that's not very nice.
No.
I got some pictures on standby for y'all, chat, just so you know what we're talking about here. I'll drop them for you.
Boy. At any rate, so I went into it. I played it a little bit at a time over the course of the time since it came out because I've been busy at work. It was audit week, and that was very, very exhausting. So I found time, though, a bit at a time, to get through it. And it is definitely, but based on the stuff that I've heard, it is definitely the worst of the pseudo singularities, and it is one of the worst chapters. However, it does not actually deserve the sheer level of opprobrium that it actually gets, because it's only mediocre and makes some pretty significant gaffes, I think, in terms of it does feel like one of the earlier singularities in a lot of ways. Like people, for instance, the most overused trope that it decides to delve into is that basically nobody ever dies the first time you kill them. Ever. They always find some way to crop up later, and there are characters which are mentioned or foreshadowed or brought in who basically either do nothing or end up being a Deus Ex Machina or whatever. Writing wise, it's very, very sloppy, and the overall theming of it, like the story in general, has zero emotional weight whatsoever. It's not like Babylonia and Camelot. There's no sense of tension the way there is in Babylonia and Camelot or Solomon. Like it's inferior in every way. And comparing it to its closest comrade in Shinjuku, it's strictly inferior to Shinjuku. And to be totally blunt, it tries to tell the same story as Shinjuku by a different means, and it's way less cool, way less novel.
But Plaid Shirt Guy.
You're a big fan of Plaid Shirt Guy for some reason. I don't know why.
He just died in that scene. And he died when he was killed. He was Guy 1. And then we only had Guy 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's there is no shortage of things to criticize about it. There are lots and lots of bad things about it narratively and especially artistically.
I have linked for everybody that has not been subjected to this horror yet. I have linked you the wonderful artwork of Shinjuku in the show chat. I want to draw special attention to the bottom link of Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, what did they do to his face?
Look at his gums.
It looks like a One Piece character. Gone wrong.
It didn't load at all. I think you tried to put too many in one.
I'll break it up.
In one message. It's best to enter if you're going to link pictures. It's generally better to link them one at a time, or Discord can get confused at times.
Yeah, Discord can get a bit wonky.
But yeah, it's very like let's deal with Columbus first of all. Number one, Columbus is a repeat of the narrative mechanic from Shinjuku, except sloppier. And I'm not going to. They even lampshade that in the story. And I'm not going to go into any further detail because it's spoilers, but we just did this. We just did this. The storyline. This exact storyline. We just did it already. So why are we doing it again? Yeah. As far as the Fate take on Columbus goes, it's a little bit odd feeling to see them so viciously drag a character when normally it's the other way around. They'll take some evil thoroughgoing tyrant like Nero and turn them into basically a quaint waifu character. And in this case, they've basically taken Columbus's grievous failings as a human being and then played him up into an absolute monster.
Fun.
Well, it's because they didn't give him boobs.
Yeah, that's probably his major problem, is that he didn't have boobs, because if he had boobs, then everything would have been fine. But
then he would have had a city to rule down there.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's. I think that you could do that, but it just seemed a little bit. I don't know if it was the translators making it sound even worse than it would already, because most people in America working in the tech industry hate America, so they hate Christopher Columbus by extension and demonize him at every possible opportunity.
One
So
of
it's
the
possible.
comments on one of the FGO sites said they actually toned down the original Columbus from the Japanese.
Wow.
That could be the case as well, because the Japanese don't like Columbus any better. So yeah, but it's one of those. I'm not going to run any apologetics for Columbus because I don't know enough about the history. I know he did turn Haiti into a hellhole, but Haiti was already a hellhole, so and continues to be a hellhole to this day. It doesn't really matter who's ruling over it. Independence hasn't done them any favors. It's made things a lot worse. Yeah, one thing I will say is that in terms of Columbus apologetics, just not specifically Columbus apologetics, is that nobody seems to ever remember that the germ theory of disease had not emerged at the time of the colonizations of the New World.
Nope.
Okay, yeah, this is an American school system especially problem that comes up when discussing how evil the Americans were to the Native Americans. They think that in the 1600s, we were using biological warfare and like using catapults to lob blankets into Indian civilizations or something that were just laced with foreign germs that they knew would just infect the local populace. And they blamed this on the settlers, like this is all the white man's fault. They didn't have a clue.
Nope.
And
Admittedly, that
I'm
kind of did happen during the Dark
even,
Ages, but whatever.
Well, this is something that I'm not even exaggerating. They'll tell you the Americans did or the English did this.
Yeah, there was no germ theory of disease back then. The germs, nobody had ever seen them. They did not know what they were. There was the idea that there might be tiny little animals that made you sick would have been, regarded broadly speaking as witchcraft. So
burned for it.
So yeah, pretty much all of the depictions in popular criticism of Columbus as a genocidal maniac hinge on the idea that he understood the germ theory of disease and was therefore spreading smallpox. Because there's no way that there was anywhere near enough Spaniards in his force to kill the 1 million people he's accused of killing. It doesn't matter if you're the only guys with guns. Killing 1 million people is hard. That's a lot of people. I get that people are also under the impression that 1 million is a smaller number than it actually is. I get the feeling sometimes.
The Santa Maria and its crew of at most 2,000 if it was a really honking big shit and stuffed to the gills.
Well, he was a governor later. The people he's accused of committing genocide against are usually the Haitians, when he was in charge of that area, basically. And he was a slaver. I mean, slavery basically just became a thing in Spain after Spain was contaminated by Islam. That was pretty much the end of it, because it had been wiped out once upon a time, but it got brought back because after the Reconquista, there were certain things that they didn't let go of that they should have. But at any rate, so it's basically there's nothing worth a damn about the story structurally that will commend it. I don't think anybody will remember this very fondly, but the amount of
moments, though, it has those.
I guess,
especially in the third act.
Yeah, mainly for a particular 3-star, but
we'll get there. But yeah. The whole arc, it's really bad as an overall story.
As an overall story is really bad, but it's only really bad the way a lot of the early stuff is really bad. It's not uniquely specially bad the way people accuse it of being, and that largely seems to be a product of the overall outlook. Well, yeah, Fergus, but I don't think it's specifically to do with Fergus. The thing is that Agartha is basically it's. I think everything that Agatha does well, or does amusingly, or does pointedly, it does by accident. However, in spite of that, I think that it's going to tick off. Well, crap!
Oh.
I just knocked a wine glass off the desk. It's not full of wine,
Oh,
but
dear.
where was I? Anyway, it does a lot of stuff by accident that I think is going to really tick a lot of people off. Namely, it's basically the Radfem dream world. Everything is controlled by women. Men are completely subject to them in every way, no matter which of the three major societies you look at. Men are either, they're either toys or they're slaves or they're pets or something like that. And the entirety of the society is just it runs on women. Absolutely. There's no part of society where men have any kind of say in anything. So it's the Radfem Dream Society. The thing is that it's an absolute hellhole in every imaginable way. There's nothing good about it anywhere for anybody.
And the story was written before the current modern Western left even was a thing, so the Japanese couldn't even look across the pond and get an idea from this. And it was just so funny to see it was totally accidental. I don't think this was intentional either, but when I give a summary of the singularity, it's going to be you tour Fergus around all versions of crazy lefty air quote utopias and show him why it's a bad idea.
Like the first city you really visit at length is like it's a women-ruled sort of hedonistic utopia. Everybody just takes whatever they want and it lives recklessly basically, and there's a hellhole. And the second city you tour is an authoritarian nightmare basically. Everything is about people trying to live under these set of overweening laws that are intended to basically perfect humanity into the perfect citizens, all run by women, of course. And basically it creates this culture where everybody is trying to dob in everybody else with the government, like in East Germany after the war.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much exactly that. And the other one is sort of like it's the Amazon state basically. Whoever has the most power rules, and everybody else follows them like worker ants. That's everything about these are all major incarnations of the socialist experiment. The free love society, the perfection of humanity by force of government, and the human hive experiment. Like those are all leftist concepts. But I don't think that it was written to be this way. I think that the writer of this scenario just decided to come up with three horrific dystopias, and they just all happened to be, left-wing fantasies.
And the breakdown that Mash and Fergus give to Wu Zitan in the second city is just, you could copy and paste that onto r/left or onto Lefty Pole on 4chan and trigger everybody. Like this is wonderful, but what happens if people lie? And Wu Zitan's like,
They wouldn't. Why would they? And her intentions to resolve that problem are literally to keep killing people until they're purified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the way every Soviet state has ever operated. They just purge people until there's no one left.
It's not too far off what Wu Zitan did in life, I suppose.
I don't know much about her.
She was very paranoid, and she was also very, very, very superstitious, which is less played into in this one. She had insecurity issues, which were pretty much. I think that the fantasy one has less justification than the real one, because the real one, she climbed to the top by putting a dagger in every back, so had every reason to expect to find one in her own.
Yeah,
so
right.
Her paranoia is understandable.
She has an interesting history they present in the game. They could have done a lot with it if they just didn't stick her in this singularity, although it did kind of work. Nightless City had the best part of the story for what was there.
It was easily the best part of the story. That was the most well-realized part of the story, although I think that's because probably because it's easier for people to relate to. There's no Amazon society in real life, and there's no society where there's no rule of law and you can take whatever you have the ability to lay hands on.
There's no hedonistic anarchy state. There's no proud warrior race state that exists in the real world.
On the other hand, the overweening authority trying to generate virtue in humanity by, totalitarian rule is pretty much, the grand new world that the modern, far progressive left wants to bring into reality. So it's sort of easy to see where they're going there.
I can just copy Mash's line, like, yeah, maybe you'll get to what you envision one day, but nobody's ever going to smile here, and post that on every lefty board and feel perfectly justified in doing it.
Yeah, you'll get banned within 3 seconds.
Less than that. I'll be banned before it gets posted, before it processes.
You get caught by the bots.
Yeah.
Independent thought alert.
At any rate, so that's one reason. If you read even a little bit into it and you hold to the sort of far socialist views that most people on the west coast of the United States, particularly, where a lot of the tech people are located, a lot of people will be very triggered by that, by the things that they're denouncing. The other thing that triggers a lot of people is that the inability to discern the gender of Astolfo and Dion are both ongoing jokes here, brought into focus quite sharp relief. And I've actually seen people online whinging about this. It's like it's transphobic or something. I don't know.
Doesn't Dion straight up say he can, or they can be either, depending on the situation, because of a skill they have?
The heroic spirits.
Like, it doesn't, they don't give a flying crap at all.
Yeah, this is how they operate as heroic spirits, but apparently this is just absolutely verboten and shouldn't exist in a story.
That is probably the scene where there's a good 2.5 minute scene where Mash and the protag are like, does Dayan have boobs? I can't tell. Let's zoom in. And the camera zooms in on, I have linked this picture in as well, the Dayan in a maid outfit, of which the bottom expression on the bottom right is worn for most of this time he is in this costume.
Because he or she is absolutely appalled at the situation. And I was actually sort of impressed with their art, because the art is just so that it does leave it kind of ambiguous what his or her chest is doing there.
Yeah.
It's not really clear. It could go either way.
Like Dion has the self-suggestion skill that apparently can straight up flip their gender whenever they need it to.
Yeah, because that's his legend in the story, is that nobody was ever really sure. So the throne doesn't remember him as being any particular gender, because nobody in the legend that generates his existence as a servant knows. So
yeah, so he's a spy. It's what he does.
But apparently there's a contingent online who finds this, utterly unacceptable. Like, this is a stunning and brave transgender character, and you aren't allowed to ask what gender they are.
Nah, call it gender fluid, and that'll shut them up for a little while.
No,
you don't ever indulge in using their fake vocabulary.
No, you don't.
It just encourages them. You don't need that.
Nobody wins.
But
I saw a couple posts of people with, like, I wouldn't wish this on anybody actually afflicted with real gender dysphoria people saying they actually really liked Dayan in this chapter. I saw 2 on Reddit in a comment that got downvoted to hell and back again. It was like -12.
Well, it's crime think, man. Crime
think, yeah.
Yeah, for both of them. And Astolfo gets a sailor uniform.
Because of course he does.
Which, to fulfill the dreams of a disturbing number of fans.
Like, at least Dayan can opt not to have certain parts. Astolfo's stuck with them, even in the sailor uniform, guys. Like, you're not getting with that.
I think that there are various parts in the text of the game that refer to Astolfo using female pronouns, but they're usually in plausible deniability situations by people who don't know Astolfo.
Or Ziton calling him a peach-haired hussy.
Yeah, but
that was funny.
Yeah, that was funny. But the Extella link text is unambiguous that Astolfo is male. the subtitles in the English version of Fate Apocrypha constantly refer to him as female. There's nothing at any point that suggests that Astolfo is male.
Until one scene later in the anime. Where he
I haven't watched very far through the English yet. I mean
there
the
is
subtitles,
no
the
way
official subtitles.
there is no way at one point in the story where they can keep that up in Apocrypha.
Well, the thing is, what makes me nervous is I'm afraid that they'll try, because that's how the dubbing industry is these days, and they do the same they do the localization for the subtitles as well. So
Oh.
yeah, I'm a bit concerned about that. So I'll have to see when I get there whether or not they keep trying to maintain the illusion that, oh well, it doesn't matter what parts you've got because it's all in your head, right?
Except Astolfo doesn't identify as a girl. He just thinks it's cute.
Yeah, but apparently just because you identify as something doesn't mean that your betters can't tell you should be identifying as something else.
Yeah.
Because you can't get anywhere in progressivism without being, an earth-shattering hypocrite. But
While Daeon, by the way, is mortified by the costume he accidentally pulls out of a closet, that's his own dang fault. Astolfo firmly embraces his costume and puts it back on a boat later.
Even if you give Dion meaningful looks, he won't put it back on.
There's a chat option where you can say, I'll forgive you if you go get dressed up as a maid again. And Daeon starts to sulk off in a corner and go, okay. And he's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
At any rate, so from the discussion, you can tell that there are still things to like about it, which is why it's different from Septim.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have anything to like about it.
It really
There are no strong character moments at all in Septim to make up for stuff going on.
That's because the only character in Septim of any concern to the plot is Nero.
Yeah.
But, so the other main servant character on your side is Fergus, and in this case, it's a young, call him unspoiled version of Fergus. So those who aren't familiar with the character of Fergus MacRoic from Irish mythology, as he appears in Fate, he is Kildea's biggest horn dog, pretty much.
Let me emphasize: Fergus's name means virile man, and he is the reason his name means that.
Yeah. He carries an incredibly phallic sword, and so on.
And he always thinks with his Fergus.
He does. He does. But yeah, so he's notorious in Fate lore for attempting to sleep with anyone and anything for any reason. Like if you do his Valentine's scene, he just gives you a key to a hotel room or something. Like that's just, or it might be his room. I can't remember. I didn't do it, so
it's his room.
Yeah. At any rate, he just gives you the key to his room. He's like, "See me later," sort of thing. That's Fergus's character. So
there's a picture for those in the live chat.
The version of Fergus, though, he's basically a botched summoning, and so the version of Fergus you get is him as a little kid, a naive little kid who, wants to become king, but is still sort of in training, doesn't really know, and most pointedly doesn't know how to deal with women, period. But he basically he has a lengthy soliloquy type thing, or very, very broken up storytelling, at least at the very end, when he starts to remember who he was when he grew up. And he basically goes on a big long rant about how men are men and women are women, and you need to have both, and they are separate and different. And it's basically kryptonite for progressives.
And this is how you make babies, or something to that effect was in the text.
Yeah, like basically he made male and female inextricable from reproduction. Like a sane person.
The response that Da Vinci and Sherlock Holmes give him right after he says it, like, that's an astute truism, Fergus. Like, this is just total common sense.
No, it was a mundane truism, not an astute truism. It was a mundane truism.
Yeah, like, this is just something everybody should know, Fergus.
It's like I can't believe that this is the conclusion you come to at the climax of your adventures, that there are men and that there are women. Like, this is the best you can come up with, really.
But thanks to the West and the way it's been behaving the last 2 years since this story was written, it made it so much funnier.
So basically, the short version is that the Singularity is mediocre. It is definitely mediocre. It still has its ups and its downs. It has its bright points and its weak points. But moreover, it is kryptonite for progressives because everything in it conforms to conventional ways of thinking. All the while showing, the feminist utopia crumbling around them. So, yeah, I think
quite literally, Fergus penetrates that feminist utopia with his giant.
He plunges his sword deeply.
It is all Fergus just screaming about how men are men and women are women, destroying this feminist utopia.
Oh dear.
As it crumbles around them, stopping the destruction of another race that I really want to make jokes about.
So, yeah, at any rate.
Oh dear.
So I can't give it a good review as a Singularity, but what I will say is that while a certain amount of hate for it is justified because the writing is sloppy and all of the art and stuff in general surrounding Columbus is pretty bad, the bulk of the hate, like the real seething hatred that I've seen towards it, I think comes from it offending people's sensibilities more than anything else.
I think if you do not have progressive values, this story is totally worth going through just for the hilarity from the accidental stuff going on.
If you don't have a twisted idea of the way the world works, if you instead adhere to the common sense of one's eyes that sane people did before they had social media to breed stupid ideas with each other, I think that what you will encounter is a workable Singularity that sort of, I'd say it's probably on about the level of London or America sort of thing.
Oh, Oceanus is what I would call it. It's not. I think
that's
America's
probably
a little worse.
Yeah,
but,
America was. I liked America better than London, but I think that Okeanos was also better than London. So Okeanos, I think that's a good pitch. I think it's at least that good. It's not the miserable pile of garbage that everybody says it is. So
get your MASH out for section 11.
MASH will save you. MASH will save you in so many situations. There are so many situations in this Singularity that I feel are, at least for the first few turns, endurance fights. Like, you need to reduce the incoming damage badly early on in a lot of these fights.
Bust out that MASH.
Yeah. MASH will save you. If your MASH is not max foo 10 by now, you, number one, you're a criminal. And number two, you want to actually get her up there because it will be invaluable.
There's a certain Gladden Gladiator who gets mega big and is gonna crit your party's face off in 2 turns if you don't bring a MASH.
Yeah, there are some reasonably tough fights all up in there. It's not a walk in the park. There are times where it's really going to test you. The boss, and the thing that I'll say about this one is that the challenges feel very fair because every enemy that you fight has very significant and well documented weaknesses for you to exploit. And if you do stupid things like fielding, Greek heroes against Penthesilea, you get everything you deserve.
I didn't expect it to respond with gameplay. I expected maybe some unique growls or something at most. No. Like 600% damage versus Greek male heroes, and Hurt couldn't put the Gladden Gladiator that time.
No, he could not. But there are a few bosses in the game that are like that they have real strong biases against particular other servants built into the AI. So there are some tough fights in there. For my part, I pretty much solved every problem by punching it. Martha was at point for pretty much everything, and every time I fought Megalos, she would be like taking off 2 gutses per turn, sort of thing.
Nursery Rhyme, Hogeki Oi, and Cleo were the stars of the show.
Yeah,
the whole way through.
Megalos was actually really easy for me because Martha just absolutely shredded Megalos. It was ridiculous how easy she punched through him. so much damage. My goodness, like every turn was like 400,000 damage. And Punch Saint ruled all. The fight, the final fight involving Megalos was a bit trickier. I had to think about that one, but in the end, it still ended up being Martha carrying the can there. Everybody else got swept away, but Marthas just kept fighting, just pouring on the damage from start to finish.
He had a unique ability. I had to restart that fight twice because he deathed both of my Avengers.
Yeah, I'd seen people talking online about how that he just decides to administer the finger of death to your characters, but it never happened to me. Like people say, there are two main things. There's death effects on the last boss and evasion effects on the second to last major boss. I didn't see any evasion effects from Megalos at all.
He got a little happy with it, not enough to restart the fight for me. He got me down to my back line, but
I think that
spammy with it, but
I think that he only uses it. Like I'd taken Pearson invincibility in case, but I never had to use it. It was just a waste of a slot. Yeah, I think it's probably because I one-turned each of his health bars instead of fighting him per se. I just blew up health bar after health bar after health bar. I completely ignored Rider of Resistance and just bullied Megalos hardcore the entire time until he fell over.
He only did it with during the last fight with Columbus.
But yeah, the fight with Caster of Nightless City was unbelievably long for me. I was not in any meaningful amount of danger at any point until the very end when I screwed up my timing and took a Noble Phantasm to the knee or whatever. But in the end, Martha still punched her out. So that seemed to be the way every fight went down, is that even if everything went wrong in the end, Martha would punch them out and be over. The only exception to that was the final Demon Pillar fights where I borrowed a Jolter for that because I don't have any Avengers except Angry Mango, and not taking an Avenger will really, really burden you in that fight.
Yeah, I ran both. Dante's finally earned his paycheck. When he didn't get insta-death, and Gorgon helped out a little bit with a Merlin backup.
Still doesn't justify all the edge. Seriously.
Yes, I ran what did I use? I think for the first Demon Pillar fight, the one where you've got to trigger his guts, I think I used Jolter and Mash and Merlin, and in the second one where you've got to stall out the first part of the fight before you can kill the boss, I screwed that up badly. I had it all calculated that when his guts timer ran out and I'd be able to kill him, he'd have 2,000 hit points left. And on the very last turn, I crit on a 10% chance.
About to say that 10% crit.
Yeah.
But Jolter one-turned him anyway, so because I got Noble Phantasm Buster. So it wasn't a problem. It turned out not to be a problem in the end, but it was still, I was kicking myself, man. But yeah, that last one I used Jean Alter and Man for that one.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I keep Jolter out front most of the time, is because when you can pull off that combo, it is so very satisfying.
Yeah, it's just instant death to whatever you pointed at, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was a relatively fair challenge in most respects. There was nothing there which was like just makes you shriek and tear your hair out. That's all reserved for the next Singularity, Shimosa, which is notorious for making people use quartz revives.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Apparently, I think it's one of the fights with Munenori is just apparently he will use his combat sitting and kill you.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. I guess we're back in the waiting pattern. I guess summer must be the next big thing to happen.
I think so.
Sure, exactly.
I think summer rerun, and then there's like some minor banner that comes up with that, and then we get new summer.
Yeah. But yeah, so the next one apparently has got a better story, but is much, much more brutal as far as the challenge that you've got to get through. Namely because you tend to just get crit out of existence constantly by the boss. So, yeah, because the boss is one of the top arts crit sabers in the game.
Fun.
I think generally speaking, Munenori is regarded as being as good as Lancelot, worse for sustained damage and better for burst. I think, or it might be the other way around. I can't remember. At any rate, it's going to be a vicious fight. Not really looking forward to it. I hate losing, but yeah. Other stuff I did this week. Well, not this week, but over the past 3 weeks, because I keep putting this off because we've always got stuff to do. I caught up on my light novel series that I follow. And I've just run over something with my chair. I'm just going to untangle myself. Okay, so I've got a bunch of light novels. So the first one that I got caught up on was Irregular Magic High School. The arc for the next 2 books that I got was it 3? I can't remember. Was the Visitor arc, which is about... It's the first major arc that takes place after the anime stops, but happens before the movie, the animated movie, which sort of a bit... I thought it was a bit strange that they put the movie there. Like, in terms of the timeline, I understand why it's there, because it's not really space, since the books detail what is happening on an almost month-by-month basis. So to insert an extra movie is kind of difficult. So they just put the movie in the summer holiday sort of thing. Yeah, so the major arc which happens before the movie, and honestly, the way I think that the arc plays out all right. It's more or less more of the same. Still way too much detail. A lot of the characters are sort of careening off in rather strange ways, like as you learn more about them and about how basically screwed up everybody's life is, that they don't even realize is screwed up, because that's just how society is in 2095. It makes some of the stuff in the movie not make sense when you've actually read the book, which is pretty strange, because they try and add a whole bunch of weight to like the sort of the final scene where basically Miyuki farewells Angelina as her rival, and they're like, oh, well, we'll meet again someday type of thing, but then they immediately meet again in the movie. Which sort of diffuses the weight of that scene a little bit. It's like, yeah, I get what they're going for. This is a traditional ending scene from shonen stories, but I know for a fact that they're just going to run into each other in the movie, which doesn't happen in the book continuity.
Oh, I'm back.
So, yeah. Yeah, at any rate, it was all right. It's still, got the cringy spectre of the brother-sister relationship hanging over it, even though the brother still has managed to maintain his total obliviousness. Things going in a creepy direction.
Stop it, Japan.
But they're both screwed up individuals in their own sort of way. So, yeah, like Miyuki died once, and it's sort of unbalanced her a little bit.
That would do that to a person.
Yeah, it's another story. Her entire family is massively screwed up for a whole bunch of reasons. But as one of the flashback stories details exactly how Miyuki ended up so obsessively dedicated to her brother, and it's largely because she died and her brother brought her back, and she basically sees that she's basically owes everything to her brother now because she would be dead otherwise. Yeah. But it was an all right arc. I felt like it didn't have sort of the... It was sort of slightly short on the momentum necessary to keep a story quite that long running, and it started to drag in a few places. I think it could have done with a little bit of editing down. But I enjoyed it, but it's something that you can really only enjoy because you like the setting, on account of it's pretty dense in a lot of ways. And it does lose me regularly when it starts to go into the minutiae of how magic is constructed, because it's just too much detail there. Like, I'm sure in the author's head it all makes sense, but having gone through his pen and then through the translator's pen, it's getting a bit hard to follow at this point. Another series that has a similar sort of problem is No Game No Life. So I'm currently reading, must be a couple of arcs on from where the anime stopped at this point. But at this point, the games that they play have gotten so unbelievably convoluted with so many different layers of secret rules and ulterior motives that I can barely follow anymore what's going on. It's really gotten a bit too dense. I am really not sure what's going on. In a sense, it's fun because it leaves you with a lot of space to guess how they're going to resolve it. And the resolutions are usually not sheer Deus Ex Machina. Because when they do the final breakdown at the end of each book, you can see how, it might be a little bit beyond reasonable to expect a reader to pick up on the clues, but as the characters experiencing the things that go on, you can see how they would structure their drawing of conclusions and resolve the issues. It doesn't come off as being a Deus Ex Machina. However, at this point, you are so far out in the weeds that I really can't work out what's going on at this point. Especially they play repeatedly with the type of rules that are mentioned for the first time in the Eastern Nation arc, where they play the shooter video game against Izuna, and how you can make the losing of memories a condition.
Oh, fun.
For play. And so, and that gets played with repeatedly. And in the current one, it is sort of roughly implied that the rules that they have been supplied are not the actual rules to the game that they're playing. And that things have been set up this way deliberately, presumably in order to allow Sora to pull some gambit that he does no longer remember how to pull. And he's basically running on the idea that since he must have agreed to the rule set that they're actually using in order for the game to take place under the Covenants, he must have left himself enough clues to work out how to solve the problem. In a similar way to the game that where he disappears bit by bit that Shira has to solve by herself, and that was animated, I think. So the story, it's another situation where the story is getting a little bit too complex and it's becoming difficult to follow. But
what is even going on?
I
think
read
we're going to stop, drop the pretext and just play Yu-Gi-Oh.
I think that would be too pedestrian.
That would you don't want to play real world Yu-Gi-Oh. The rules there make No Game No Life looks like nothing.
That's what I mean. Sooner or later, they're going to reach that point.
The basis of the rules in No Game No Life, though, is that those rules are always the same. The rules in Yu-Gi-Oh change by the season.
They
by the reader.
Literally every season, the wiki errata gets updated for single card.
How do you even get accredited as a judge?
Very, very carefully. I did it once, and it was a nightmare. I got my judge certification for Magic, one test. That was it. I got my judge certification for Yu-Gi-Oh! They need you to give a history of all the changes that have been made to some cards throughout the various sets.
Well, that's because some of the written rules on the wiki and the actual rulings completely contradict what's actually on the card.
Yes. Like, you need to be able to tell them how the rulings on Swords of Revealing Light have changed throughout the years. And when I got my judge certification, it had changed 5 times.
Yeah.
So by now it's what, 55?
I don't know. The X season onwards messed everything up.
Oh dear.
Anyway, so next series. I read the next volume of Log Horizon. And this is the first volume, which follows on from the raid on the TV station, which is the final arc of the anime. And rather than being about the main group, it cuts back over to Konami's group over in the China server. And basically the story is about it adds a little bit more insight into what actually happened, why did all of the ancients disappear, and where exactly is Krusty why is he still over there? What happens to him when he got teleported away? That sort of thing. So it pursues that particular group and how they are dealing with things, and very little focus is given to the main group in Akiba. They're pretty much off screen for the most of it, and the story ends the same way the TV station arc does, where they find the communication device and they make contact with the other side. So yeah, I felt like it was an enjoyable and complete story, but I was sort of a bit bewildered as to why they had decided to give so much attention to Kanami's group. But maybe that will be explained at some point in the future. It was there were a few sort of hints dropped about what's going on. Like, the reason that most of the ancients have disappeared is because fundamentally the Genius's tactic for dealing with them was to introduce them to the idea that they're NPCs, which for most of them, they don't have the willpower to overpower that way of thinking, and it puts them in a coma of sorts, it seems. Like they because it's the truth, that they were at least at one point, it's not clear whether that's still the case, that they were programmed entities with a predetermined destiny, and all of the things that they experience are dictated from outside. Because it's true, it's sort of got a almost irresistible inertia for them, and it basically puts them in a state of sort of nihilistic despair, at which point they shut down.
Yeah,
so
that's horrible.
That seems to be their strategy for dealing with them, because in gameplay terms, the ancients should be able to absolutely demolish the genius. It's just that the geniuses have this extra fact that they can tell them, and apparently the NPCs refer to them as the words of death because it pretty much kills everybody who hears them. And the sort of the surviving ancient that is part of Kanami's party was sort of thawed out of it temporarily by Kanami, and the story focuses in part on his attempts to try and sort of find a new resolve, a new reason for being that is unrelated to the game rules, so that he can overcome the call of the words of death. But yeah, so that was interesting. I read the next couple of books of Konosuba as well.
Oh dear.
Kazuma's still scum, more or less. Yeah, everybody is more or less the same way they were before. There are a few extra sort of revelations. Some of the jokes in Isekai Quartet are actually based on revelations in the books.
Okay.
So they just soar over your head if you don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I won't spoil them because they'll probably, I hope, do another season of Konosuba.
Please do another season of Konosuba.
Mostly, the books since the end of the anime have been shenanigans focused on one or more of the girls, and how they're all pretty much they're all moving into position to be sort of like viable candidates for the whatchamacallit, the visual novel that is Kazuma's life, or that he wants his life to be, but isn't. And despite the fact that they're all completely eccentric and unstable people, they're gradually moving into position. Even Aqua has moved slightly in that direction and then immediately moves back out of it.
I was going to say, no,
like
they can't
she
be right.
seemed Kazuma's sort of taken aback because she seems to have reformed, and that manages to last about 12 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's see, where am I to in that one now? I think the first, I think I read 2 additional books after the last one. The previous 2 before the 2 that I read most recently were also from after the anime, and they deal with Kazuma visiting Megumin's home village, and Kazuma becoming a layabout, basically the worthless layabout playmate of the nation's princess. The 2 that I've recently read concern Darkness has basically been taking on a lot of debt. Darkness's family has been taking on a lot of debt in order to cover for the stupid crap that Kazuma's party have done. And at this point, the only thing left of value that they have is Darkness basically sells herself to one of the corrupt lords as a bride.
Wasn't
And
Darkness's family pretty loaded initially?
yeah,
Yeah.
they were. But
Not anymore.
Kazuma's caused a lot of problems. So, well, it's not really his fault, to be honest. But
Well, it's partly his fault.
so this is basically about them dealing with the fact that Darkness has tried to betroth herself to the hideously corrupt lord, who's the father of the Bishonen that she has the engagement meeting thing with in one of the animated episodes.
Yep.
Yeah, his father, the one that tries to have Kazuma executed, that guy.
Oh yeah. That yeah.
Yeah. So she gets engaged to him, and they basically have this big. Well, Kazuma refuses to help for the longest time, but in the end, they have their big dramatic wedding crasher moment. But yeah, that's that story. The other one is the annual Eris Appreciation Festival, and Aqua insists that she needs a festival as well, because it's not fair that her junior goddess has a festival but she doesn't.
Her junior goddess is so much more competent than she ever was.
Yeah, so I will spoil one thing, which is not really a grand revelation, but if you're watching Isekai Quartet, if you haven't managed to discern the truth, then having it spoiled won't actually will actually be necessary to understand a lot of the gags that are made in there. So spoiler warning. It's revealed at the end of I think it's revealed officially after the story about Darkness's wedding that the thief Chris is the goddess Eris.
Ah, okay.
And she's basically she's not like Aqua, who is a goddess who has been forced onto the physical plane. She's assembled a temporary body that is Chris, and is using it basically to carry out duties that she can't as a goddess, which is mainly to do with reclaiming cheat items that have been given to people who have been sent to that world and have subsequently died or whatever. And apparently the items, while they only work for the person they're given to, with an appropriate sacrifice, you can make those game breakers work for anybody. And so she's been trying to reclaim them. That's why she's a thief, because she's trying to steal them back from the various vaults and that rich people have put them in. But there's a lot of gags in Isekai Quartet around that. That Kazuma knows who she is, but nobody else does. And it's sort of it's played with in the books as well that Eris is the only one that while Kazuma is a cad, definitely a cad, Eris is the only one that he's like genuinely infatuated with, and so he doesn't treat her as such. Instead, he sort of like will blithely ask her out on dates and propose to her every time they have a conversation, sort of thing, which she considers sexual harassment, and he doesn't have any intention of stopping. Yeah. At any rate, I think the books continue to be good, but I think that they're in too much of a repetitive pattern at the moment of just doing, basically rom-com style stories, and they need to get back to, stories which are of a larger sort of scope. Like there is a big fight against a Hydra, but it doesn't last very long. I miss them constantly fighting the Demon Lord's lieutenants. I think that was more fun than constantly doing this rom-com stuff, which I think they've done a few books in a row now of that.
You gotta give the illusion that every girl has a shot, but in the end it's gonna be Aqua. I
hope not.
That would be
because that's a fate worse than death.
That's like maybe be Aqua.
Maybe Kazuma deserves it. Maybe that's the penalty for his.
Maybe.
They have to give you that hope and then take it away and watch you squirm in despair.
But it's made pretty clear that Darkness and Megumin are both carrying a torch for him. Although Darkness is in denial and Megumin has sort of accepted it and is using it to toy with him constantly without ever actually coming right out and saying it. Like, it's not the conventional stuttering Tsundere can't say how she really feels. It's like, oh, she knows how she really feels, but it's more fun to torment Kazuma using it by making it sort of obvious, but never actually being willing to admit it in a way that will clarify it for him who is insecure about it. Which sort of calls into question how much she actually likes him if that's the way she wants to express it.
I can understand this. This is perfectly logical behavior.
Totally logical.
Anyway, that's the light novels that I have read. There is another one in the post, I think, that I had pre-ordered for Irregular Magic High School, which they are starting in the in-universe chronology their second year. So that means that the author has said that means that the third years in the cast sort of they're gonna appear in the story because they're all societally important people, but they're going to sort of take a step out of the school shenanigans because they're all moving on to bigger things.
Mm-hmm.
And that means there's going to be introduced a new generation of troublemaking first years that are going to have to be sorted out. But yeah. I don't think I've got anything else to add to my week because I've already taken up a lot of time.
Yep, we should probably take a break then.
We should. Here's some music, folks. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Yes, indeedy.
So we were at Falls Week still when we went to a break.
I'll call an end to it there.
Okay. So, I interjected in those 2 weeks because they were going to cover all the stuff I did this week too. So I don't have actually a whole lot for my week. I'll do some roundup on Bloodstained, and I think that'll be about it because I've been just really busy this week. I had one day off. I had Thursday evening to basically do what I wanted, and I just blew through Agartha and just chugged apples to get through it.
I can never bring myself to use apples for things like that. I just feel like I'm wasting them.
But you just never use them.
I know. I've got a small mountain of them, and I just never feel like using them, or never can bring myself to use them. Because I might need them for something.
Even if you pop them consecutively back to back to back to back to back, if you've got 999 of those things, that ain't enough. Like, you're not going to eat them all for a whole Christmas event, dude.
No, I know.
Even though that's the ideal.
That is the ideal. It's really that stupid gamer mindset.
You have to break it, because they're totally useless if you don't use them for situations like this.
Yep.
Just whenever you got time to play, use the apples. That's what
that's been my logic. I spend them whenever I feel like it, on the reasoning that, well, I mean, I might as well use them when I've got time to play, because I might not have time to play at another time when I...
Yeah.
No point.
So, yeah. Because you're going to be working or sleeping or living a normal life in addition to FGOing during the time that, you would optimally be able to spend them, because we're not college students. We have lives and we have jobs. we have to go to work.
I don't want an adult anymore.
I don't either. So my week has mostly been consisting of fending off the government. Vol has been doing battle with the government. I have been doing the battle before that and attempting to prevent the battle with the government. It has had varying degrees of success. As long as they don't write me back, things should slow down on Monday. If our CPA agent says, "Yep, everything looks good," I'm golden.
Nice.
So that's what I'm hoping for. So I guess I'll wrap up with Bloodstained and cover some stuff now that I've had more than 2 days to play it, and have a bit more than my initial playthrough to go on. So first thing about Bloodstained. I said this last week, and I mentioned that it was important because it is with modern Kickstarters. It is exactly what they said it would be. It's more Castlevania. But I didn't really elaborate on what that implies at all. It's more Castlevania. That's what we wanted. But at the time the Kickstarter was pitched 5 years ago, we were in a drought of that subgenre of game. Like, it just basically wasn't there. We were out of that type of game. So the thing about just releasing Symphony of the Night or Order of Ecclesia, in this case again, is the subgenre has moved on. It has grown since we last played Order of Ecclesia back in like 2008. And Iga had a hard time catching up with that. And this is more Hollow Knight shilling, basically, is what this boils down to.
Never seen too much of that.
Yeah. So Hollow Knight, it just does everything that Bloodstained is trying to do better. Its combat is more engaging. Its difficulty is more appropriately balanced. You can't bust Hollow Knight like you can Bloodstained. Things like that. The map is just bigger in Hollow Knight. The enemies are more diverse, and there's just a lot more ways to approach them in Hollow Knight. The movement options, while not as ridiculous and over the top, are much more baked into the core of the game and make for a better video game experience going on here. There's just... And this is really hard for me to say, because I do like Bloodstained and what it does, but it's just... Hang on, I'm dying in Hollow Knight. Let's put the controller over there. But it just doesn't do things as good as its successor does. And
yeah, I don't think that Castlevania fans are willing to accept that, though, because like there's a colleague of mine at work who's a big Castlevania fan, and he just flat out asserts that there will never be a Castlevania game better than Symphony of the Night. There'll never be a game in that style better than Symphony of the Night. It's just not possible. They're not willing to accept the reality that something like Hollow Knight might be better in some way.
Yeah. And I'm replaying Hollow Knight right now instead of going through Bloodstained and getting the platy in it because it corrupted my hard drive. Yeah. One of the patches, the most recent one, just will corrupt your hard drive if you have an original PS4, so don't update.
Do not do it.
Had to reinstall every single game I downloaded. Thankfully, PS Plus autosave backup is a thing.
Gotta love that cloud.
Thankfully, you don't have to reinstall Street Fighter.
That is true. I have a physical copy of that game, so it wasn't on the hard drive. For what that is worth, I suppose. Which is nothing. They might as well have put a cardboard disc in there. But yeah, it's just, I can't justify continuing to play Bloodstained when I have not finished all the DLC for Hollow Knight yet.
And you got the sequel coming out soon too.
Yeah, and Silksong's coming out. Like, there just ain't a whole lot of good reasons for me to keep playing Bloodstained. And it's a good game. If you like the subgenre, it's not a waste of your time at all. But it's got a myriad of technical issues because it's still early out. Hollow Knight doesn't and never has had ones that bad. And it's just not as good overall as a product in any of its aspects. Hollow Knight's story is better. Hollow Knight's world is better. Hollow Knight's map is better. The exploration feels better. The combat is way better in Hollow Knight. The boss fights in Hollow Knight are way more engaging. There are way more of them in Hollow Knight. And Hollow Knight also doesn't charge you $50. It's $15 for it, and all of its DLC is free. Like, we've done this song and dance ever since this initial Kickstarter happened, and we got something that was even better in the meantime. And it's sad. I really do think there is value in Bloodstained. It's just there is something with even more value out there. And that's just in the 2D space. In the 3D space, FromSoft has been playing with the exploration platformer subgenre formula and making it work with games like Bloodborne, Sekiro, and the Souls series. It's just... And it frustrates me to no end because you cannot talk about this. This is taboo, what I am saying right now. Like, no Castlevania fan will accept this. You can't have this conversation with people. It's just, Bloodstained is the greatest thing ever of all time, period, end. The technical issues don't mean anything. Oh, the game has the best map design ever, and all the cool movement abilities from all the past Castlevania games make it have the best movement in any game of this subgenre, period. Like, no, it doesn't. Y'all are wrong. Y'all are just running on nostalgia here, guys. Like, can we have a bit of objectivity here when saying what's the best at something in a subgenre? No? Okay, just checking. That's really what it feels like when I'm having conversations about Bloodstained.
That's fanboyism for you.
Yeah, it is totally toxic and just drowned in nostalgic fanboyism. Whenever
to be fair, the only reason that Bloodstained exists is because those people with that mentality do.
I suppose so, but yeah. And yeah, I want to stress Bloodstained is a good video game. It just doesn't do everything that it's the people lauding it are saying it does. There are better products out there. If you want this style of gameplay done in 3D better, go play Sekiro. If you want this style of gameplay done better in 2D, go play Hollow Knight. Like, the better alternatives exist for cheaper already. And people are saying they haven't played these games. And they're like, I don't really, but I really like Castlevania, so I might get into Bloodstained. I'm like, that's fine, but there's better options for less money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this comes down to, really. There are better options for less money. So I think that about covers most of what I would say about Bloodstained. It's just Order of Ecclesia again. It's not even Symphony of the Night. It's Order of Ecclesia. So all these Symphony of the Night fanboys that are saying it's just like Symphony of the Night, sorry, honeys, y'all are wrong. the gameplay doesn't emulate Symphony of the Night at all. There are nods and references, and yeah, the terrible intern that voiced Alucard does voice a secret boss that fights just like Alucard does.
It's totally not Alucard.
Yeah, and he's a librarian that you can rent books from, just like in Symphony of the Night. But the shard gameplay, the items, the weapons, everything, the way they work, it's Order of Ecclesia all over again. It's just a bit prettier, and it crashes all the time.
And corrupts your hard drive.
And corrupts your hard drive. Technical issues aside, all that would be fine. But it's just not worth all the fanboy praise that it's getting, folks.
Never
Period.
is.
It's good. It is still a successful Kickstarter. It is still, they did what they said they would do. And for a Kickstarter, that is a whole lot of a ringing endorsement for them. But they're asking $50 for that? And you can go buy Hollow Knight for $2.50 on sale? And you're going to say you're going to pass up Hollow Knight to go play Bloodstained.
Go play Hollow Knight already.
Basically. This is just going, there's no way I can take this topic and not turn it into shilling for Team Cherry. Because they're just better at this. Like, they're just better at their job.
Okay.
Before
we keep hammering on that.
But that's about all I got for my week anyway. I covered the rest of the stuff in Vol's week with Agartha and whatever I chimed in with your week.
Yep.
So, yeah. That's about all I can do for my own week. I think we should move into the email, which I don't have pulled up right now.
We actually does have the email this week.
We do.
The email?
The email. All right. Either of you guys want to take it, or should I take it?
You take it.
I don't have it pulled up.
I'll just pause this while I do this. Okay. So it comes from our good buddy Serathus, and he says, "Dear No Excuses. Life is full of disappointment. You already know about my dislike for the second season of One Punch. One Punch season 2.
we could scarcely not know about it, considering how much time he's been crying about it.
And not just Serathus either, everyone.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere near any anime community on the internet right now without hearing how bad the new season is.
Yeah.
I have no opinion on it. I haven't watched it, just before we get into that.
Yeah, anywho. I can't wait to see how they ruin the Garo vs. 6 Heroes fight by not showing the action. Yeah. But that's not all.
Important fight. I don't know.
That seems to be the running thing on Season 2 is there's something really cool happening, but we're not going to show it to you. Because we didn't have the budget.
Just trust us. It was really great.
It was really awesome, and you guys totally should have seen it. But that's not all. I bought a bunch of games on Steam and ended up refunding most of them. Yay. Like Vambrace, Cold Soul, being inspired, the art style of Darkest Dungeon, won't save your game if the rest of the mechanics and atmosphere are not there. Like the narrator, or the first actual combat. For one, the damage numbers don't show up in the middle of the screen where characters are whacking at each other. You know the place where your eyes are naturally drawn to. They're off on the top at the status bar. Show it for a second. Also, considering how great the literally one-frame animations of Darkest Dungeon were, Vambrace looks ridiculous how the characters run over to the enemy to whack them on the head, then run back. Even Epic Battle Fantasy's jump whack animations were more fluid. Yeah, Epic Battle Fantasy being made in Flash, by the way. Play more EBF 5. Incidentally, is EBF 5 on sale? It probably is. Also refunded Seeds of Resilience, because I like the survival village building games. And it's not bad, it just wasn't for me. Too rigid with the build orders, because I hope you like build orders. If you're not building and crafting stuff in just the right way, your guys will starve and freeze, and the storms will destroy their shelters, and everything will suck forever. That sounds like most of these games.
Yeah, I thought that was the point.
But yeah, there are a few out there that just get a bit kind of stuck on the way of doing things. Like if you don't do things in exactly the right order at exactly the right time, then you're screwed. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, it's not really... Like, that sort of defeats the purpose of the sort of building type game. Like, if you've got no agency to decide how you do things at all, there's not really any point in playing them.
That's right. Since I don't want to be all negative Nancy, why? You're emailing our show after all. I started playing some Final Fantasy XIV. Since everything in BFA collapsed and caught fire and chased away all their fanboys, I've been catboying around Eorzea for a month now. Finished Heavenswood, got my crafting to 42-ish, mining and botany to 50, chasing unspoiled nodes like a demented Satura wannabe, while my main class, the Paladin, just learned how to actually dive underwater. I played the game wrong by skipping the story, but it's still more enjoyable than the Snorefest of BFA. That's from Serathus.
Yeah, BFA really... It really seems to... They've dropped the ball in every possible way.
Yeah.
And this is not... It's not a matter of, oh, well, you know, I'm some kind of former World of Warcraft fan who's got sour grapes or something like that. They really have not done a very good job. They've been very poor stewards of that game.
Even their most ardent defenders on YouTube are just they've given up.
The thing is, the thing that's just really, you know, face palming, wall bangingly stupid is that the grand failure, which is at the heart of everything, I think. Well, laying aside philosophical errors, because they've made quite a few of those, but in terms of the material that they provide, the failure is the same as the one that TB always said it was, and that Octale always said it was, in that they think dailies are content. That's why people are burning out. More than anything else. More than anything else, that's the reason people are burning out, is because they may be disguised now as world quests, but they're dailies. Everybody can tell that they're dailies. That's why you log in and do them every day, is because they're dailies.
Yeah.
But I think that's very much the problem, is that they keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they think that people are too dumb to notice that, oh, actually, this is the same. This is the exact same thing we were doing last time, and people do notice and they stop playing.
Yeah.
Like it's perfectly reasonable for people to stop playing when they're presented with more of the same. Now, what I have heard is that the disguise has gotten good enough in the latest patch that people are willing to tolerate it, because they've got their new zones. They've got they didn't use specifically world quests. They left it a bit more free form, and they've got new zones, being the underwater one that looks like a clone of Azuna, and the new Mechagon one, which is apparently pretty good. But they've managed to bring back some people. Like, they're doing pretty well on people, but ultimately they really need to address their core philosophical problems, and whether or not they're truly willing to do that is an open question, because they have often in the past said that they're willing to deal with those issues, and it's never been true for some value of truth. Like, they may think that they are addressing them, but in the end, what they do is they just force through some other almost exactly the same vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have any effect, and that's what they've been doing for years now, and that's why they continue to dribble down the drain. The problem is that the amount of money that they're making is probably the same as it ever was, because there are enough people who are willing to buy every store mount that comes out for some reason that are propping it up. I mean, because they decided that, oh, well, we're going, rather than making it a priority to uphold the overall quality of the game, because we're going to make our money off of subscriptions, instead they decided to make their money off of premium purchases. So they deliberately divided their customer base into whales and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the people who were most discerning about the quality of content were people like me who don't pay a cent, because they've got gold.
Yeah. I just haven't heard anything good. Even the story seems to have lost all momentum. Like, they've run out of characters to fight and to kill.
Well, I don't know if that's even true. They just kind of, the ones they have used don't sound like they've been used very well.
Well, I think that what's going on here is that what's going on at present, from, like, you know, the 1,000-foot view, is I think that they're gearing up to change World of Warcraft. Like,
That'd be
not
nice.
not not necessarily to do World of Warcraft 2 or anything like that, but I think the way that they're setting up the narrative at present smells of we realize that we have basically bled this beast dry, and a paradigm shift is needed in order to freshen things up now. You can't just add more content and expect that to do the job.
They've
So
been trying that and it hasn't worked.
So I think that I think that what lies in the future is something more like Cataclysm, and that they're going to revamp everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way things currently are, in terms of the way the narrative is going, is that we've circled all the way back around to Green Jesus and Jaina,
Yep.
and they are they're having their rapprochement now because they realise that, you know, all of their petty bullcrap didn't really amount to much in the face of what it's like when somebody who is legitimately evil is in charge of the Horde and legitimately has an interest in eternal war.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything that they were doing in the past just looks kind of petty now. So they have their rapprochement moment in the latest patch, and it looks an awful lot like they are going to go the way of something like getting rid of the faction system entirely. Because let's be real, the rules around the factions have not meant anything for a long time now.
They really haven't.
Because if they had, they would not be able to say, put the war back in Warcraft every single BlizzCon.
Yeah.
And they have so far.
And they never have actually managed it.
It's not a BlizzCon. It's not a WoW announcement if you don't put the war back in Warcraft.
Yeah. I could see them abolishing the factions. Like, they've got
I don't know what form that would take. Maybe they'll just make every race available for both sides or something like that. But that's the impression I'm getting is something like that. And in conjunction with that, I think they're going to go full retard with the old gods thing this time.
Yep.
Because the entire expansion and the end of the previous one was all pretty much arranged to massage the old gods shtick. Like that's what they've been building to, is that things are going to get very old goddy. There are going to be tentacles everywhere. This is where we're headed now.
Yeah, apparently one of them, the dead one's going to be resurrected or something.
No, the angle they're transparently going for is Shara is basically in collusion with N'Zoth, except that she seems to be under the spectacular delusion that she's in a position of advantage.
Yeah, that's going to get crushed pretty soon.
That has never, ever, ever happened with an old god, and furthermore, she's been in this position before with Sargeras, and look how that went.
Yeah. That's why she's got tentacles now.
Yeah, so I think that that's really where they're headed, and there's a lot they can do that, because in the lore, once upon a time, the cities of the old gods covered the entire surface of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like the entirety of Azeroth was old god territory, and all of that is supposedly still sealed beneath the earth somewhere. So they can do the Cataclysm shtick if Azshara gets her way and just bring it all back up to the surface.
Yep.
So there are lots of avenues for basically changing the face of Azeroth entirely.
Again.
And it seems like considering there've been sort of several patches running extending into the previous expansion of the player characters getting played for fools by old gods, and basically everything is about the arrangement for the rebirth of their ancient empire at this point. It seems like they want to just move the whole thing into a new chapter.
Yeah. Well, look at it this way. Cataclysm was released end of 2010. And the game really hasn't changed too much since then.
Oh, God, don't say that, Fern.
I know, right? See?
It's overdue for a revamp. And they've acknowledged... they've acknowledged quite recently and I think we talked about it on the. Can't remember.
I think we
They've
did.
acknowledged quite recently that they've totally screwed the pooch on class design, and that their core philosophy of how they were trying to do it was just, it's proven to be straight out wrong, and every time that they've tried to salvage it, it's just made things worse.
Yeah.
So I think that they're reaching that point when they realize that the game is as a whole stale, and I think that Battle for Azeroth is sort of like the key component of that, because it really gave off a feeling. If you try and put yourself in the dev's shoes, you would have really gotten a feeling like everything you were trying failed. Every time you tried to make something exciting, it just, you had egg on your face. Everything didn't work the way it was supposed to. Everything was always a disastrous failure, no matter how hard you tried. And it's all because they're pursuing the same way of doing things that they always do.
It just don't work.
The question now is really, are they willing to just milk whales for eternity and keep, pushing things the same direction until there's 5 people playing the game at like, $500,000 a month? Or are they going to actually reboot the game? Like, just really burn everything to the ground and start over? Because I think that there are probably a lot of people, like, for instance, me, who nothing that they could possibly offer could get me back if they keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same rut.
It would need to be a different game. The game would have to change entirely. They could not keep doing any of the crap that they're currently doing, because I left because of that crap.
Mm-hmm. We don't want to keep coming back to it.
If they want their game to expand and have a future, then they need to try something else for once. And they've got a tough row to hoe. I mean, they've got to beat Final Fantasy XIV, and honestly, I would much rather play Final Fantasy XIV. If I had the time to play an MMO, I would be installing Final Fantasy XIV. I would not be installing WoW, because the story in Final Fantasy XIV is actually fun and compelling, and the story in WoW is comically inept.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's not just bad either. It's not just bad. It also makes you feel bad.
It does,
because you are always in the position of this complete doofus who does doofy things for no reason, and you just get made sport of by everybody around you. You don't really feel like anything you did really mattered in the end, because it was always just as planned for somebody. And it's a very unsatisfying in a lot of ways. Like, nothing you do ultimately has any effect. Like, you aren't a participant. You're just an onlooker who has to do the grinding while the heroes take the glory.
Yeah, they still call you the hero of Azeroth.
Well, they call you the hero of Azeroth, but the way things are now, you don't even do anything heroic. You actually do everything wrong.
Yes.
Like, you spend this entire expansion basically farting about with what will ultimately return the old gods to power on Azeroth. Like, that's what you're doing. That's your cause. This instrumentally what you're accomplishing is everything wrong.
Nice job there, hero. Nice job.
And I mean, it's not your fault. How could you have known? It's not fair. They're not being fair. But, that's just the way things are. I don't know why they don't know why they think that people will like that.
Well, if you are playing World of Warcraft nowadays, you probably are a doof.
Well, a lot of people just have a lot of faith that it's going to get better next patch.
You'd have to be incredibly stupid to believe that.
The thing is the thing is that they've always signaled that, right? Like, Blizzard has always signaled that. They always, when things have gotten really bad, they always make a half step in the right direction and then spout a lot of rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they just say things; it's they always do something that hints at a change in the wind. And then, Q3 ends, the numbers come in, and they decide, what we need is 2 more store mounts.
Yeah.
Some CEO sees the subscriber numbers after the disaster and is like, we need more money.
Well, that's the thing, that they don't care about subscriber numbers. They haven't cared about subscriber numbers for years. I think, the guy who does Bellular Gaming said that he was on the phone with Blizzard PR, and PR told him, look, you need to tell your listeners there's more to success than subscriber numbers. We don't care about that because we're making just as much money as ever. That's just their take at present, is that what matters is the revenue you pull in. It's not about being an overall satisfying game. That's hard. You could just just export some, like, because if you look at, like, and this is another thing Bellular said, and I think that it illustrates the point quite well. There are two kinds of top tier mounts in the game. There are the mounts you get for clearing the hardest raid in the game on Mythic, and you get a sweet mount for that usually.
Yeah.
And there are mounts that you buy in the store. The mounts that you buy on the store look vastly better. The ones that you get from playing have descended to the level of just being reskins now.
Yeah.
They're not unique models anymore. Like back during Legion, there were some unique models. Now they're not unique models, they're just recolors. That's their level of value in content. Is that the content that brings in money is the valuable content, and we only really need to care about. That's just their attitude now. That's what you've got to deal with.
You got to release another Baby Ragnaros, though. Otherwise, you can't sell more stuff in the pet shop.
So what the only thing then in this scenario that can drive improvement is if the devs themselves decide to put the hard yards in. So what we're basically having to rely on is the reversal of their pride, in the sense that previously their pride led them to ignore all advice because, you think you do, but you don't.
Yeah.
You think you do, but you don't. Now that has been abundantly shown to be unclear, because everything that they thought has resulted in the most apocalyptically poorly received expansion ever. And the thing is, this is not uninformed people skiting about how, oh well, look at where Blizzard is now. They make crappy expansions, because the actual throughput and sales of box copies and digital copies of Battle for Azeroth was spectacular. Like, they moved a lot of product.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are complaining about it bought in good faith, and that's why they're mad. They bought in good faith and they were betrayed.
Yep.
So, having seen that, having seen what their attitude leads to, and in addition to that, Classic nipping at their heels, they have to come up with something to redeem themselves, something to recapture the sort of the zing that they once had, the thing that made World of Warcraft the glamorous MMO to play, because it had so much depth and so much color. They need to find it again, because because they prioritize money over everything else. We need to rely on their pride in their own production in order to see an improvement. If they continue down the path that they're on, it just shows that they don't care about the game anymore. So you have no reason to hope for anything in its future. Because before, I think that even as bad as the game has gotten, I think that they really did care about the products they produced. You can see in some of the art that they do for it that there is a lot of love that goes into World of Warcraft still. It's just that everything was strangulated by their pride as far as design was concerned. Like, they would latch onto an idea and just do it over and over and over again, because what could possibly be better? They think they do, but they don't.
I
It
like
doesn't-
that reversal.
But yeah, at any rate, I think that nobody wants to be faced with the reality of Classic being a meteoric success while your allegedly same product fails. How can that possibly feel?
Mm-hmm.
And it's looking very dangerous, because if you look at this is a very, very poor metric, but despite being a poor metric, it's also the metric that the money people are interested in right now. If you look at streamer numbers for Classic versus streamer numbers for Battle for Azeroth, there's no comparison. Everybody is interested in Classic. Nobody gives a toss about current Battle for Azeroth.
Yeah, that's really gonna hurt.
And considering, like, for those of us who are old hands who played WoW Vanilla, how boring the actual gameplay of WoW Vanilla is, in a sort of a direct, focused, analyzed sense, it's unbelievably slow and boring. It's the meta the meta game and meta narrative that surrounds everything that gave WoW its spark back then. You can't see that in a stream, but people would still rather watch the stream. Remember On Next Hit Heroic Strike?
I remember.
Yeah, I
Remember-
remember.
Pressing that button, seeing it light up, and waiting for your character to auto attack again.
I
I
Yeah.
made my own spreadsheet for how that all works out with weapon speed. I'd still got them on a hard drive render somewhere.
Remember, there was one weapon that had like a 4.1 second swing speed.
Arcanite Reaper Ho, yep, I remember.
Yep.
But
Well, it
yeah,
wasn't the Arcanite Reaper that was 4.1, but same
no,
idea.
4.1 was the longest
Legend.
one, I think.
Yeah, it was
I
like
can't
the
remember
twin imps or something dropped some stupid one like that or something. Yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, so-
Strength on cloth gear.
But you see, the things that you're saying now, those are the legends that matter. Like nobody remembers any of the like you played during Warlords of Draenor, Ari. Do you remember any of the gear you got at all?
No,
Nope.
And why would you? There's no stories associated with any of that crap.
but I remember my bear trap.
And everybody who was a DPS warrior remembers the Arcanite Reaper. There's nothing more important than the Arcanite Reaper.
No,
Yep, that's
that
what
was,
just
that was it.
every tank was required to get the Arcanite Reaper for
Well,
the one
'cause
fight you
some-
might have to DPS.
Yeah, because that's your ticket to DPS, and so there's a legend built up around the Arcanite Reaper, and none of it was intended by Blizzard.
And there are because epics were not handed out like candy. Each epic you got had a potential to have a personal story with it, like the bear trap I keep bringing up.
hmm
Like you can't
yes.
have that in modern WoW.
So the point is that meta thing is something that players build, and while we'll never get it back. Even WoW Classic, it will never get it back. You could still build another one. You could build other such things. The culture is different now, but you know, people who are in the generation that are effectively following us, you know, the kids that watch streams all the time, they will have their own version of that type of thing, except it'll be the much sadder and more depressing. Remember when, you know, streamer X did Y, but
Ugh.
that approach of not trying to design everybody into a pigeonhole is really what's going to make the difference. If they can recapture that, because the reality is that it's a super curated experience that World of Warcraft is doing. Everything that happens is dictated. You don't have any choices. The extent to which you can choose anything is trivial. The problem is that when it comes to a dictated, curated experience, Final Fantasy XIV is just better. Their story is better. They've got cinematics. They've got compelling characters. Their adventures are more spectacular. They have more impact on the scenario of the world. You are somebody important because you're the Warrior of Light, and there's things that only the Warrior of Light can do. Like, you don't have the capacity, Blizzard, to take on Square Enix at being Final Fantasy. So stop it. They can't tell that story. They can't tell the same story. Their stories are a sad, pathetic thing. Nobody remembers the story of Naxxramas. They remember the stories about Naxxramas.
We remember the stories about Mr. Bigglesworth, is what you mean to say there.
Well, yeah, but the story Mr. Bigglesworth was only important because the players decided that he was.
Exactly. There was always a fight over who would get to kill Mr. Bigglesworth.
There wasn't an in-engine cinematic about Mr. Bigglesworth to notify you of Mr. Bigglesworth's presence and how important he was, and how it was very important that you fight over who kills him.
And here's
You got
something
a
rather
scripted line
telling.
of dialogue.
There is one in Hearthstone.
Well, that's the change in their philosophy, right? They need to tell you the things that are funny. They need to tell you the things that are entertaining. You aren't allowed to think about those things for yourself. You might choose the wrong things.
I know, right?
That would
They
be
have, to be
appalling.
they have to be prepped and ready for what you choose so that they can market it to death.
Yeah, they need to release a Funko Pop for it.
Ugh.
Disgusting.
If you
That's,
like Funko Pops, by the way, you're a terrible person.
Just stop. Please stop.
Stop being a person.
Funko Pops are like the terrible poor man's Nendroid. At least Nendroids are cute. Funko
Ish.
Pops are hideous.
Funko Pops fall apart.
I've never handled one.
I'm like, my cousin has them out the wazoo. and they feel like a tennis ball with its core ripped out.
Ugh,
Well, they're basically just hollow pieces of plastic, aren't they?
pretty much.
Yeah,
They can't be a very good tactile sensation.
no.
But as far as I can tell, EB is now the Funko Pop store. They don't sell video games anymore.
That's the GameStop experience. Is they just have a shelf of Funko Pop that takes up a whole wall. Like
That's
the
it.
game section is now less than half the store if you don't count the bargain bins. It's just everything else is just Funko Pop stuff everywhere, as far as the eye can see.
Anywho, we are running out of time, so we should actually quickly knock on this news before we patch up.
All right, thanks for the email, Zarathus. We got lost in the WoW weeds.
I know, right? Again. Okay.
WoW weeds.
That's all right. There's no real news this week because E3 just happened.
Indeed.
Yeah, the things people are talking about are all quite minor, like, people saying stupid things about loot boxes and that kind of thing. Which
Yeah.
appears to be what you do on an off week, is you say dumb things about loot boxes, or if you need to make sure that you get your place in the weekly news cycle because you're epic, you say something dumb about exclusives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could make fun of Tom Sweeney, but
Low hanging
it's
fruit.
just
Suffice to say, Epic are in the news cycle again for saying something dumb.
yeah.
Big surprise. That's only happened every week since Epic got back into the news.
You got to up your game, Epic. You got to be a little more stupid for us to talk about you at this point. And we're a no-name show, and we're not talking about you. Well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, you got to wow us with your stupidity. You got to break some new ground.
Like, we're in a competition right now where the whole games industry is playing the Hold My Pumpkin Spice Latte game. Like, you got to really up the spiciness on your pumpkin spice latte if you want us to cover your news.
I'm reliably informed that quote pumpkin spice unquote is just cinnamon.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
As far as I can tell, it pretty much is. Maybe
I
a
don't
little
know.
bit of nutmeg.
I've never had anything from Starbucks I thought tasted even remotely good.
No.
I had one
Nobody
thing
ever
from
does.
Starbucks like 10 years ago, and I don't remember what it tasted.
It is usually female friends of mine that will drag me to Starbucks and say it tastes wonderful, and I'm like, y'all are insane.
I think it's the taste of the Starbucks experience of being sneered at by a bored barista.
Yeah. However, we do have some good news on how the Switch release for Disgaea 4 is going to come out,
Yeah.
and how I need this in my life, because it comes with a Valvatorez sardines poster in the style of the Barack Obama Hope poster.
It's an old meme, but it's still good.
It
not-
does explain to me why I was unable to buy Disgaea 4 when I tried. Is because it basically went out of print, presumably because they intended to reissue this one.
Yeah. But yeah, Disgaea 4 is an amazing video game, and now you can get Valvatorez as Obama.
Yeah. among
So what
other
you're trying to
things.
say is that you would vote for him.
I would vote for Obama
I'd totally vote
Torres.
for him.
I'd vote for Obama Torres in a heartbeat.
I mean, take those long, boring speeches and fill them with ham and sardines.
Mostly just sardines.
Mostly just sardines. Good times. All right.
That's the only good news I got this week.
Yeah.
I posted a link where you can see all the stuff in the collection edition. It has a sardine pin bookmark. It has a sardine bookmark. It does come with a art book and soundtrack,
Yeah.
as standard.
Does it come
So
in a box?
one thing I've been. Oh, we're still talking about this.
No,
Oh.
that's probably it. Just making the old joke.
Yeah, because there's only so much we can talk about. The collector's edition on a game which is probably like 50 years old at this point. Because I don't even understand how time works. Because every time I turn around, I seem to have gotten dramatically older.
Yeah.
The box is not listed as
Okay.
one of the featured
So-
items, though.
It came out more than 8 years ago.
Wow.
I don't want to think about this.
Yeah. Moving on.
Kids have been going to school for several years. They have been born and then have been in school for several years since the release of Disgaea 4. So Yeah. Chew on that for a while.
No, I'm not going to chew on that. I refuse.
One thing I've been meaning to ask, Fern, because people keep talking about it, is have you stuck your face back in No Man's Sky at any point?
Not for a long time.
Because apparently they've got like 1 million concurrents now.
Yeah, they've been releasing content and actual updates, so the game resembles what it originally looked like now. I kind of looked in just around the time they added actual real multiplayer. So yeah, it's got its dedicated fan base now, and it's kind of got its own little
It's
niche.
It's not just like when you normally when you say dedicated fan base, you mean like 1,000 people that play it, not like 10 million, which is what's actually happening.
I know. Maybe it's trying to pull it down and actually see what on earth is going on. I don't know. So yeah, No Man's Sky, I tried it. I kind of enjoyed it at that point, but I also realized it was still pretty much more of the same. I don't know. Maybe they've overhauled it or something. Again.
For me though, No Man's Sky will always be that game with the Jurassic Park theme played badly on a harmonica.
Very badly.
I had that song and that version of it pop up in my head when I saw something this week, and I forgot what it was.
Good times.
All
right.
Pretty Yaku's theme song.
Pretty much. All right. Other things, we've got Nintendo screwing the pooch on Pokemon.
I've seen nothing but outrage over that, so to the point that I don't actually know what they're outraged about because they're just mad.
They're just in general mad at this point, yeah.
So the Pokemon director or whoever the head of Game Freak is, one of the upper echelon dudes came out and said, "Okay, my dudes, you're not getting the National Pokedex. Not every Pokemon will be in Sword and Shield."
Yeah.
And initially, people tried to white knight Game Freak, like, "Oh, it makes total sense and stuff." And then people realized that they have Pokemon money.
Yeah. Like, I was originally going to give them the benefit of the doubt because, okay, it makes sense. They've only got so many hours in the day to make models, but they have Pokemon money.
Yeah, there's no excuse for this.
What platform is this game going on? I don't even remember.
This is a Switch.
Switchy witchy.
Does the Switch use like discs or cartridges or what?
Very small.
Like, is it a storage? So is it a storage media problem?
I don't think so, because we can fit several gigabytes on those things, up to at least 24.
They're a decently sized memory card, yeah.
Yeah, they ain't tiny. I think you can fit up 50 gigs on those things.
Yeah.
And there ain't no way in heck a Pikaman game is 50 gigs.
Well, this one's fancy though, isn't it? Oh, I don't know.
It is fancy.
I'm not a Pokemon person.
It is fancier.
But it's not the 50 gig behemoths we see nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but the Street Fighter was a 50 gig behemoth.
That's Capcom.
And it wasn't fancy either.
It was just the complete opposite of fancy, in fact.
It was 50 gigs of nothing.
Yeah.
What I'm not saying that this is a storage media problem. I'm just trying to circle round to it as a possibility on account of they've never made a game sufficiently graphically complex enough to worry about space. So it may be that they've just never had to optimize for space before and have no idea how.
It might be. I don't think so. And even then, you have Pokemon money.
Yeah.
This is a problem that can be fixed by throwing enough Pokemon money at it.
So yeah, everyone's really mad about it.
So what this is actually about then is making a particular release window.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that you can't throw money at, because there's limitations on scale when it comes to development. Like, you can't actually throw people at a problem infinitely because the communication problems will get too great. Yeah. So what this is really about is a release window.
Yeah. So this isn't the first time they've broken up the release like this. Like, they did it in Black and White as well, kind of. And that went over about as well as you'd expect then as well. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they're doubling down on this.
People don't seem to talk about Black and White.
Black and White
It's not
2
a very
gets
well liked generation.
Black and White 2 gets the talking about, if anything. It had the strongest story of any Pokemon game, but that's about it.
Are there any others that have a number after the name?
No, Sun and Moon had sequels, but they were Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon.
Yeah. But yeah, that was also a direct sequel though.
Yeah.
So it's happened before. We'll probably get Sword and Board again at some point as a sequel, and that'll have all the Pokemon in it.
Hope so. Otherwise,
So the really cynical part of me wants to say it's just a cash grab for the sequel.
So at any rate, did Game Freak give an excuse?
they gave a statement, but it was very hollow from what I read. There was basically nothing in it. Thank you for all the fans caring so deeply about Pikaman. Blah, 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 blah. Very difficult decision for me. I like to make one thing clear. Even if specific Pikaman is not available in Pokemon Sword and Board, that does not mean it will not appear in future games. The world of Pikaman continues to evolve, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, a whole lot of PR buzz. Nothing in there about why it actually happened.
Or if they're going to overturn it.
Yeah. So, people ain't happy about that.
Yeah, people are really mad.
Mm-hmm.
Not mad enough to not buy the game, though, because it is, of course, a Pikaman game.
Yep. I saw a picture of the actual Pikaman from Smash Brothers a while ago, and now that we're saying it over and over again, it's popping in my head.
Oh?
You don't remember where Pikaman actually came from? It
Oh,
was a Smash Brothers Brawl mod that model swapped Pikachu with, like, one of the lanky, long characters. And made his
Okay.
whole body glitch and distort out. I'll find you a picture.
So
Anyway.
like Nip Gigante then.
Nepgiga. Oh god, that monstrosity. Why? Also,
that was true horror in its purest form.
that
I'll
was.
post it in live show chat too. That's Pikaman.
I would post Nip
Right.
Gigante, but I don't really want to try and find it. It's pretty horrifying.
Whoa, what is going on here? Right, well, those who are actually watching the stream at the moment, I think I've broken physics. So with that, anything else on the docket?
Not anything particular that I want to jump on. It's been a very busy and slow week.
Yeah.
That's why I piggybacked off y'all's 2 weeks.
Yeah, and there's been no news.
People have been burbling about something about unskippable ads in video games, but I didn't follow up on it because
That's
I couldn't
because it
find
was
anybody willing to confirm it.
It was
Yeah.
an NBA game, wasn't it?
It was the
And I don't care.
NBA 2K, whichever one it was.
It was yeah.
They put the game out for super cheap, but as on the downside though, you've got unskippable ads now in the game.
And I just don't care about Hoopsketball enough to care.
Yeah, unfortunately, with these big name sports games, the scummy business practices are pretty much standard.
If you're a
standard
sports
operating
fan,
procedure.
you're even dumber than people that have played video games their whole life. Like, we're pretty dumb. We'll buy a whole lot of dumb stuff, those of us that play video games. But you sports fans, y'all make us look like geniuses.
That's sad.
It's true, though. They'll buy into this FIFA nonsense garbage, this Hoopsketball. They'll bet in fantasy football knowing they're going to lose. Like we do dumb stuff. We buy sparkly ponies.
We
And
do.
TRH. We buy TRH. We buy into the FGO gotcha. But at least we don't buy the EA Sports games.
Yeah. All right. In that case, we should probably start to wrap up. Now that I've fixed physics.
Yep. So, I think we're done.
I think we are.
I don't see anything else. Nope, there's nothing else this week.
All right. Let's get out of here then.
All right. Email topic of the week. So, you can write to us about why you think Fergus is so Fergus. And I think that'll work out just fine.
Oh dear.
Because you guys aren't going to write about it anyway, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Alright.
closing comments go. Fergus.
Fergus? I don't think this is how gyroscopes are supposed to work.
All right, I think we're done. I think Val's dying.
Yeah, I've had a croaky throat all week and it's starting to get worn out at this point.
All right. We'll see y'all next week, hopefully with more weeks and more content and more news. As always, we'll see you then. Sayonara. Bye-bye.